So, hello everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Table Football Talks, a space where we chat with players and people connected to table football to learn from them and enjoy a good conversation with some of the key figures of the game. Today we have Eric Naszalyi with us, one of the best players in the world during the 90s, a key figure of the creation of the International Federation, and the current president of the French Table Football Federation. Welcome Eric and merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for being here.
Hola a todos. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be part of your program.
Thank you very much. I always like to start from the beginning. So if you can explain how do you discover the game and how old were you when we began?
Well, I was 8 when I was offered the game for Christmas by my aunt, and my cousin was playing too at the time. But we played just on the ground, I guess, like everybody else. And after a few nights, all the figures were broken. And it's not until when I was 14 that I found out that there was a tournament in a toy shop near my house. Because at the time, Waddington was distributing the game in France, and they were organizing promo and demo events in toy shops. So I went with a good friend of mine, and I won the beginners event that day. And I met some of the, let's say, professional players like Fuseau, Michel Guézins, who were playing the experienced players event, and I was really, really amazed by the sport dimension and the competitiveness and everything. So I joined, and that's the start of the journey.
Okay. In France there were heavyweight figures, or it was lightweight already, or at that moment?
It's a good question. You could still find some heavyweight at the time, and they were really we were really looking for heavyweight to start with, because with painting and weighting and everything, they would behave a lot better than the lightweights. But the toy shops were selling mostly the lightweights, so you really had to look for very old shops to find heavyweights.
Okay, the same there in Spain. This was at the beginning of the 80s, right? Or something like that?
This was, yes, it was in 81, late 81, September and 81.
Okay, when we have at home some magazines from France, from the Sucy Ambry Grand Prix and something like that, and I have the first one that I have is from '86, I think, and we
Hmm.
were already in the second place in the division in Ile-de-France. So how was this process from this first tournament? Do you have a group of friends to train or something like that? Or?
Yeah, in fact, we already have in the 80s, in the early 80s, a magazine called La Lettre du Subutéo, which was the 4 pages magazine from the French Association. And that was in 81, 82. And then I started, maybe we'll talk about that more when we talk about Fistive, but I started my own magazine in 83 when I was 16. The idea was first to be the better player of my town with my group of friends. 12 of us were playing at the time from my town, which was Suresnes, outside of Paris. And then I wanted to become the best player of the Ile-de-France area, Paris area, and then the best of France, and so on. So we have a French say that is l'appétit vient en mangeant, meaning that the more you eat, the more you want to eat.
Yeah, the more you win, no, the more you win, the more you want to.
So in '86, I lost to Fuseau in the final of the French Championship. So I was runner-up for the first time. I beat him a few weeks before in a big tournament in Bordeaux, in Prignac. But in that French Championship final in '86 in the Parc des Princes, it was in the Parc des Princes Stadium, I lost 3-2. But I was really close to him back then. I was training between 15 years old and 18 years old, I was training 2 or 3 hours every day by myself, plus games with the friends. So I was really, really trying hard to compete more and more and become a better player.
Yeah, like in a professional sport, more or less.
Exactly.
Okay, so the next question was about the Aubervilliers club, but I'm also interested in this period. So you begin in the Sorens in your town,
Yeah.
hometown, and then
Yes, my hometown with.
how do you get to into Montpellier avec Bivron?
Yes, yes. I was. I started Aubervilliers with a good friend of mine, and then some friends from school and college. Then some of them wanted to stop, of course. Like kids, they don't want to carry on all the sports and all the activities. But I wanted to compete more and more, and I wanted to be French junior champion. And at the time, there were two choices in the best French clubs. It was Maison Alfort, where the junior champion was Michel Guésins, who won the French championship twice, the junior championship, and Aubervilliers. So with Vivron and Michel Barrault and Fuseau at the time. But I joined Maison Alfort first because they were, for me, I thought they were better for juniors. So I stayed 1 year in Maison Alfort. We won the French championship by club, first time for me. And then I moved to Aubervilliers because the club of Maison Alfort also had difficulties. So I moved to Aubervilliers and stayed with Vivron, Barrault, and a few others for many years. And we won also the French championship many times, but also the first European Cup for clubs in '85 in Belgium, in Spa. Which was a big achievement for us. And so I was happy to go twice a week by metro in Aubervilliers to train with Thierry, Michel Barrault, and all the youngsters we had, Christophe Montero, who is back in the game now, David Zaki, and a few others who were really good.
How many players were more or less in the Paris area at that time, at the beginning of the 80s or so?
I just check in my old magazines to prepare the interview. It was between 50 and 60 players that were playing in the Paris area, Île-de-France divisions. So you can probably add maybe 20 more who were not playing in the division. So maybe a little less than 100 players at the time. Really a good number of players.
That's a huge number of players.
Yeah. All levels, all ages. I mean, not all ages, because we were all young. We were all between 10 and 25 maybe.
Yeah, okay. So there were, you just talk about this, there were some different venues, Maison Alfort and Aubervilliers. There were any other clubs in the Sucy-en-Brie? I imagine Sucy-en-Brie, that's a little bit far.
Sucy-en-Brie came later. Sucy-en-Brie came later because Laurent Garnier and the Garnier family first played with Henri Cornu at Paris 18, Paris the 18th in the north of Paris, which was close to Aubervilliers, but it was one club there. We had Paris 15 in the south of Paris. There was Paris 12 with Daniel Rebourg, who will probably listen to the podcast now when it will be online. There was also a club in Villeneuve-Saint-Georges with Stéphane Klein, Jacques Ibiri, Didier Lavigne, who were really at the origin of many competitions. Stéphane Klein is really the father of many of our competitions in France. French Cup, Championnat de Paris, many French points, French ranking. He was at the origin of many things, Stéphane, and he was in the club of Villeneuve-Saint-Georges at the start. So many clubs.
Okay, so that gets me to the next question. That France, especially in the 80s and probably in the early 90s, was probably next to Italy or at the same time the most important country in the world, in the world of Subbuteo or table football. It depends. How can you explain how it was to play in France, not only in Ile-de-France, but in all France, because there were divisions all around the country? How it was, how it was the ambient and the environment and all of that?
That's right. So as I said, we were all between 15 and 25. It was the start. The rules were not as strict as they are now. So it was a very competitive atmosphere. We all wanted to win. So some players had behaviors that were not as peaceful as it is now. I think it was the same in Spain. I read the interview. I listened to the interview of Juan Carlos and Arturo and also Carlos Flores. So I know it was a bit the same everywhere. So it was very competitive throughout the country. In the south of France, there was Philippe Gillet, who was champion in 81. Lionel Abécassis was a French champion 2 times also. He was very competitive. In the Lyon area, there was 2 clubs at the time. There were 2 clubs. We had clubs in the southwest. We had clubs almost everywhere except the east of France, which was kind of a free land, whereas now we have many clubs these days, but at the time there was no clubs in the east of France. And of course, Waddington was promoting the game in a big way with the toy shops and tournaments in the toy shops. And I think there were many teams available everywhere. Things were not easier, but for sure the game was available in shops. So that's a big point.
Well, it was easier for the kids, no? Because they have an entry level very easy to the shops, a company that the sponsorship that has the money and all the things that we don't have.
Exactly. So it was the thing we had at the time. Is France is still let's say it's a big country. The distance are not small, and there were no cheap flights. The EasyJet and all the rest of it came much later. So we had to travel by car, but it was nice because even when we were traveling in the country, most of the time we would sleep in youth hostel or sometime with other players at other players' place. The same in Belgium. I remember the first tournaments in Belgium, we were sleeping with at other players' place. So it was very friendly in that respect, but also very competitive.
Okay. Well, one of the areas that has disappeared and was very huge because they had the Grand Prix we'll talk about is Sucy-en-Brie. And how was this? Because there are, that I remember, 2 big tournaments in France in some period. There were in Cannes. In Cannes there was also a Grand Prix, and this one in Sucy-en-Brie that they made their own magazine. That it was very well printed, and how did they form or how did they organize all these things?
Okay, so Marcel Jablonski and Chantal Jablonski in Cannes started to raise the level of organization from the French Championship in 1984, and they really improved the way things were organized. And then Laurent Garnier and his team and his wife and his team took it to another level with the Grand Prix of Sucy-en-Brie, with stands and sponsorship for the club and many things. And of course, it helped, let's say, to get the best players from Europe to come to the event. We had at Sucy-en-Brie many players traveling from all over Europe mostly, and that was great. As a player, I've always been quite, at least in the early days, very I criticized Laurent a lot because the way the tournament was organized was mostly for the show. But the playing fields and the boards were not always flat. Sometimes it was really new nylon pitches from Saturday at 8 in the morning. It was a brand new nylon pitch you couldn't really play on. So this kind of thing. So we had some arguments at the time, but of course it was a great event to take part to and to participate in, and we had a fantastic attendance at the time in Sucy-en-Brie.
Okay, we have talked about some of the best players from France from these days. For the people who wasn't there at the time, what players do you think they were the best at the time? Including yourself, but I'm saying that. So.
Yeah, thank you. In the 80s, for sure, Christophe Fuseau, Thierry Vivron, Frédéric Hernandez, Philippe Gillet, Lionel Abécassis, Michel Guésins until 84, Joël David of Elbeuf. Then we had Henri Cornu, who started to raise also at a very good level. Hervé Klein. Maybe I'm forgetting somebody, but not too sure. I think we got pretty much all the best players of that era. And then in the early 90s, Some of them stopped, like Hernandez, who stopped after the World Cup in Rome. And we had some players from Bordeaux, like Didier Ledet, who became really good. David Crémou from Chabanais, and then he joined my club in Issy that I started in 91. We will probably talk about that later, but David was also a good player, and Nicolas Vlodarczyk from Sucy-en-Brie, Jean-Guillaume Heinzle from Louvral, but that was in the middle of the 90s then. But in the 80s, it was really about Fuseau, Vivron, Hernandez, myself, Gillet, Abécassis.
Okay. You talked about this a little bit before. You began to travel, I suppose, first in Belgium for the proximity, so it was easier to go there. And
Exactly.
what difference did you see in other countries when you traveled, even after that? I mean, if you went to UK or Italy or...
It's a very important question, Ricard, because for me, and this is when I started my magazine Mouvement and then Mouvement International, because I'm talking about the founding or gathering the ETF and the FISA. I started to talk about that in 1986. I was 19. I traveled then in Belgium, in Germany, and England mostly at the time for proximity, as you said. And I played in, let's say in England, we made a summer tour with Henri Cornu and Michel Barrault and myself with my first car. And just as I got my driving license, we went for 1 week, in fact, a bit more than 1 week. And every night we stopped in a different club, playing club nights. So sometimes it was with the ETF guys, ETSA guys, playing with a big ball, cotton pitch, metal goals. And then the next day it was with the FISA guys with a small ball, nylon pitch, plastic goals, keeper on the ground. So it was a totally different game. And then the same in Belgium, the same in Germany. And I thought, this is really crazy to have such a small group of people playing in a different game, just for whatever reasons. Mostly it was business reasons. Sometimes it was ego reasons between old guys. And I said that if we want to grow the game, we have to gather everybody and find common rules, align rules, allow the equipment anybody want to play with, even with the flats, with the cardboard figures. And there were some amazing players in the ETSA, like Kevin Dyson, Bob Varney, Phil Holmes, for the English guys, and then Horst Becker in Germany, Martin Schrott, all those guys were amazing. Axel Schneider, they were amazing with the flats, and they were not competing in the FISA events. So that was really, really crazy. So I had this in mind when traveling, and this started to grow the seed of really, because I was lucky enough to speak good English at an early age, so I could, tell them and talk to them and listen to them and see why these things happen and what they wanted for the future of the game. So it was the start of that, let's say, brainstorming of ideas and rules and things that would then, a few years later, lead to the creation of FISTIF.
Okay, so that was the next question, no? The difference between FISA and ETF. I know some of them, but if you can explain what were these two different federations, because I think that the players that have 30 or 20 years don't know anything about that.
Yeah, it's I sometimes talk casually about that in events, but the thing that you can realize it when I was playing, for example, I had an example in mind. I played a tournament in Milan one weekend with a small ball, the same as we have now, nylon pitch, very fast pitch, plastic goals from Subuteo, and the keeper was on the ground. The plastic keeper was on the ground, which is what we were playing FISA at the time. In Spain, the same, in France, the same. And there was back all the time, with missing the block. And, that was the game as it was played in FISA. And then the next week, I went to a tournament in Germany where there was almost never a back, even when you was flicking fast. They would never give you the back. It was a cotton pitch, very big ball, the one of the early days. Metal goals, the same as now almost, where when you hit the post, the ball goes back in your own half. And the keeper was mostly the flat goalkeeper, the bigger, and it was in the air, so it was much harder to score a goal. And the game was much slower too. So I thought that it was nice in many ways to have a slow playing surface like the cotton and a fast one. It was almost like in tennis when you play on clay at Roland Garros, the French Open, and then you play in Wimbledon's grass. So it makes things nice because it allows different styles. But then when it comes to the size of the ball, the plastic goal or metal goals, and the way the keeper was on the floor or high in the air, this was ridiculous because it would lead to a really different game, and it was really hard to compete well one week with one rules and the next week with another rule. So that was the game at the time. So it was really really hard, and I managed to do well in both, but it was really hard to win tournaments against the best players who practice the same rule every day. Of course, when you get to the early stage, it's okay. But when you reach the quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, you play the best players of each country with its own rule. Then it's hard when you change rule every week.
Yeah, that's true. There was no ETF in Spain. I think in France there was a little bit. No ETF.
No, correct. It was mostly the English, Germans, Swiss, Austria, Netherlands had both. They had Martin Bohm, who played ETF, and Patrick de Jong was most on the FISA side, and René Bolt. And then in Belgium, they had a bit of both. It was kind of a mix.
Okay. One of the things that I've read some time ago, one of your interviews, is that you did train a lot with the myth of Willy Hoffmann, no? One of the best players in the 80s in the history from Switzerland.
Sure.
How was that?
Well, I think we became friends with Willy maybe in 88 or 89, I don't remember exactly, but then we started to meet for full weekends. He was sometimes coming to Paris at my place when I was living with my parents. So I had a big room and with a table, and then sometimes I was most times I was going to his hometown in Switzerland near Zurich. And we played full weekends of Subito and talk about the future of the game, and of course play and train, and it was amazing because Willy is of course one of the goats of those years, and I learned a lot from him. I don't know if he learned a lot from me, but I surely learned a lot from him. and yeah, it was something really. Happy times.
Okay, that was more or less. It was in the final of the 80s, and then you said before that you founded the Issy Moulineaux in the early 90s, no? So it was
exactly
of this period. How can you explain how you founded the club, and why was the motivation?
Okay, so I played for Aubervilliers for 6 years, and we won the French championship 6 times in a row. I won my first French titles, individuals, in 87. And then we also won the first Europa Cup for clubs, and we lost the seconds against Cornes in the final. And in that Europa Cup for clubs, I played Renzo Frignani for the first time. We drew 1-1 when he was really at his peak, so I was quite happy with this 1-1 against Renzo in 88. And then I started to have a little less motivation for the game by myself, my individual game. So first I left Aubervilliers for 2 years and joined Elbeuf, who was run by Patrick Pellerin. He also had a big tournament, a nice group of players and guys, and Elbeuf was never French champion for clubs. So my motivation was to join and help him get what his dream was, which was for his club to be French champion, and we were French champion twice in a row. So when I joined, so I was quite happy, and then I was 24 in '91, and I wanted to have my own club, start with my own ideas from scratch. So I created the club in Issy-les-Moulineaux, not far from where I lived, and started to make demos in school, in a school with kids of 10 years old, 10, 11 years old, first year, and we started amazingly well. We had up to 40 players. One year we had 40 players from all ages, many under 12, many under 16. Most of them really competed well. Flavien Bouche, Frédéric Dross, rest in peace, Fred, but and his brother Nicolas, Richard Caragésian, Olivier Beugin, Emmanuel Guillaume, Flavien Bouche, as I said. Many of those players really did well in the French championships and in tournaments. Olivier Crast, Ramon Domen, I can't name them all, but many players. Then Thierry Vivron and Henri Cornu joined us the second year. And we became the best club, not just with a team, but as a club, I listened to what Juan Carlos Granados said about the difference between a team and a club, and I couldn't agree more. We were not just a good team, but we're a very good club.
Yeah, because and the same question I have this. No, you have been in this club. You changed the name recently because of the things we will talk later. But you were friends, even families. Within the years, the Modeste, the Naszalyi families. I mean, the club became something else that not a team. It's a team because you're competing, but.
Yeah, the Axel Modeste was playing with Henri Cornu at the time in Paris 18, and then he joined us when he started to play again about 15 years ago. But Axel didn't play for longer than I did. He stopped for maybe 20 years, and he started again with Théo Modeste, his son, back in 2009, I think it was. And we started to really become really closer at the time, and I guess we were older, and we had the same vision of what friendship and what Subbuteo should be. So yeah, it's Mesque un club.
Okay, so that was in the early 90s. That was just the foundation of the International Federation. But let's play about how did you get, because you said that the motivation was going down. You created the Issy-les-Moulineaux, the motivation grew up a lot. And then in 1994, you became the runner-up in the first World Cup from the
FIST.
So how was that? I think this was not Subbuteo material. I assume there was the FIST basis or so.
In the '94 World Cup, I played with the FIST figures from Willy Hoffman. This was my first year with those figures, and they were spinning well. They would really suit my game, playing fast, because I was already playing fast. I was one of the fastest players, even with the HW.
Okay.
I was really playing fast all the way through my career. I've always played fast, so volleys and playing fast 2 or 3 times in a row, and that's always been my game. But with the FIST of figures, it was so much easier to play fast and control and everything. So, and I started to be really, really good in those years. I think I was world number 1 for 3 years in a row, 93, 94, 95. Let's be honest, I wasn't the best player in the world because I was playing a little more than others in big events, so I got more points. But I was always going to the latter stages of events. I won some, I lost some in the finals, but I was always going far. So I was among the best players in those years. And I think what I missed in '94 is because I prepared myself so much like a professional of any sport. For many weeks before, I lost weight. I focused, I make, visions of the games and the opponents. And in fact, I played Arturo Martinez in the last 16. I beat him 4-2. Then I played David Baxter of Scotland. I beat him 3-2. Then I beat Paulo Sobal in the semi. I beat him 3-2 also. And in the last two games, I was really fast, leading 2-0. Then they came back 2-2. And I wasn't, stressed whatsoever because I knew I would win those because I saw that, in visions before, like hypnotic things. And I won 3-2 those two games. And another thing you may realize, and I think Juan Carlos talked about that too, but in those years, the final of the Open competition was always the last game, the only game. So when I won the semifinal, I went out of the venue and I started to relax because I thought I had some time to relax, half an hour, 45 minutes, when the finals of the other categories were played. But that time, they called the final of the Open at the same time as the other finals. So I rushed to the table, not prepared, because for me, I had the time. This was something I hadn't planned before. So Dominic DeMarco at the kickoff, and he scored from the kickoff. I still wasn't in the game. And by the time I was in the game, I was 2-0 down. So I went back to 1, and I shot on the crossbar with seconds left, and I lost 2-1. So this is still some kind of a bitterness because I was, and I think I've always been one of the only top players who also train kids on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, like now at the PUC. So for me, being one of the top players and still giving so much to the kids, I knew it took some focus away from my own game.
It's very difficult to do both things at the same time. Yeah? It's very, very difficult because you have time for one or for the two things. So.
Exactly. Yeah, it's hard to be selfish. When you have kids playing their own World Cup or European Championship or major, you have to. They expect something from you. So you have to give them what they expect, or at least some of what they expect, which means you can't focus on your own game.
Yeah, that's true. Especially in this game, that you have to be full focused and concentration 100%, especially when you as the group stage and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Okay, so
yeah, and I think that was the first World Cup of Massimo Bolognino, also in '94. He played for Italy in Paris, it was a very nice World Cup. That first FISTEF World Cup was very nice in a nice venue. This year we have a nicer venue, but the venue in '94 was really, really nice.
Well, it was more difficult in '94 to get a nicer venue, no? Or probably cheaper, but
a lot cheaper. It's very expensive now.
Okay, so let's try to like a little bit of your game analysis. You made a preview talking that you were very fast, even in the Subbuteo era. Did you prepare your figures with some extra weight or something like that, or how did you prepare your?
I paint a little more on the base, each figure separately, and practice my shooting so that I could shoot from small distances and long distances and still spin, because I've always loved to spin back in the days, and now it's of course more difficult, but I've always loved to spin.
Well, there's an amazing goal in the World Cup in Gibraltar from you to Antonio
Yes.
Montano, that you do the spin and then you shoot in the...
Yeah, you've seen that.
Yeah, it's an amazing goal.
The nicest I scored was against Carl Young in the final in the English Grand Prix at Hemel Hempstead back in the days, early 90s, and I scored from a side of the pitch, spinning and shooting on the move from the line, and chipped his keeper, and I jumped as high as the table. Well, he said to me, because I couldn't see me, but and I won that game 4-3. Probably one of the best games I've ever played.
Okay, so you.
But I love to spin. Okay. And then at the defense, I was quite surprised and happy to see that Juan Carlos was calling this the French defense. And in fact, Thierry Vivron is the father of that defense, with the W kind of, and that allows switch figures and make moves that you can't do if you're on one line. And because we have figures on both sides of the shooting area, we can force throw-ins on both sides too. Whereas some players still put the defense on the line, which is kind of strange to me, because you can't force and you can't make these coulisser, as we say in French. You can't move the defense in the same way. But I guess as Juan Carlos was saying, players have to try everything and see what suits them best. So for me, I've always played with that French defense. The only difference between Thierry Vivron and I, and my top two figures on the side are on the second area and not in my shooting area. But that's the only difference. And then I've always played fast. Well, sometimes I would turn more, like a bit like what Renzo Frignani was doing back in the days, like an octopus, going on the left side and then going back center and then on the right side, finish and everything. But sometimes I try to play à contretemps, as we say, counter attack, bam bam. And so I try to read the opponent's mind, and if he expects me on the left, I would go on the right, and he expects me to play slow, I would play fast, and if he expects me to play fast, I would play slow. So I try to read his mind.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've seen in the couple of or three YouTube videos that there are from the recent years, that you are always analyzing the pitch. You're always analyzing where your figures are. There are not a lot of players that are doing that. Most of the players play from the instinct, and they don't have the map of the pitch.
Exactly.
It's quite clear that you have the map of the pitch in your head, and even if you are analyzing the other player, then you have always been an analyst of your game and of other players' game, right?
Yes, exactly. When I wanted to improve my game, I was really watching a lot of sports, other sports too, and I learned and I took some things from handball, basketball, snooker, pool, whatever, the position of your own body, how you put your weight on the left leg if you're on the left side of the pitch before shooting, the position of the arm. Nothing is... everything is studied. I try to focus on things that the others don't even think about. And this is to gain this extra 1, 2, 3% more to succeed a little more when you do things.
Yeah, it's especially when you are in the same peak of that player. You have this plus, you will win the game probably.
Yes, because as I try to say to the kids now, is that the level of technique now is very close, because we have fantastic equipments. All the bases are good. So what will make you a special player is what you do with every flick, where you play, what figure you take, where you put the ball, where you move the figure you've just played in. It's a move. It's almost a free move. You touch the ball and then that figure continues somewhere. And if you take snooker as an example, we are still miles away from snooker. They know exactly where the ball will come back. If we manage, and that's what I try to do, to hit the ball and know exactly where your figure will go, maybe preventing a block flick, maybe allowing a pass direct, everything that you can predict better will help you become a better player.
Yeah, that's what Carlos Flores has done a lot. No, he pushes his own figures to
exactly
get stuff like that. No?
Exactly. So this is something I had in mind for many years, even before the new equipment. And before the new equipment, I already had this in mind. And this is also why, even sometimes I was playing fast, I had some situations in mind with Christophe Fuseau. Fuseau is a tall guy. And at the time, there was no physical obstruction. So he would be on the same side I was. So sometimes I was playing volley without seeing the ball. and I scored many times without even seeing the ball. I launched the ball. His arm was there, his body was there, but I knew exactly where the ball was and scored from there.
Okay, so everything was studied. Continuing with this, how did you train when you were at your peak on your game? You said before that like 2 or 3 hours per day. So in the 80s, it continued this way, or how did you manage this?
Then when I had the club of let's say when I had the club of Issy Molino, I was mostly practicing volleys and fast play, because this is the kind of things where you can't really play alone. I mean, you can, but it's better if there is an opponent trying things. And I was trying things, and in the aim to score, and in the aim to find different angles, things that cannot be expected. So I was practicing this at the club. So of course it doesn't work 90% of the time, but it helps you to know that you can do it. And when the right times come in the game, in the last 10 seconds, in the last 30 seconds, in the last 2 seconds, you know you can score from anywhere in the pitch. Carlos does that too. Carlos can score from anywhere at any time, but especially in the last few seconds. And this is something really important. And then when I wanted to practice for a specific competition, like the World Cup in '94, or the European Championship in '95, some French tournament in the late '80s, I was not playing almost for 1 month in the summer. And then 3 weeks before the tournament, I was practicing with specific exercises, many exercises I put on a paper. Small controls, long controls, small passes, long passes, 10 times each, all sides of the pitch. I have that in an Excel file now. For those who want, it's available. So the whole thing would last 90 minutes, give you a score. And I was doing that almost every day. And my goal was to improve my rate as I got close to the tournament. So my level of technique I was so confident in my level of technique that on the right day, I knew exactly what to do.
Yeah, without thinking even, no? Because
Without thinking.
You have mechanized all the movements and...
Passing has always been also a key part of my game, because a crossing pass, if it goes within 2 or 3 centimeters of your next figure, nobody can defend that on a cross line. So I practiced the passing so much, thousands of times, from all distances. Passing has always been a critical part, and that's what I try to tell them. Now the game has changed so much, because with the figures, players, they control, they have a very close game, but not only it's not nice to see, but it's not really efficient for me. But,
Well, that was very difficult to do long passes, because a lot of players predict your movement, no, and they catch the ball before.
They can. Now it's easier, so they can. But you can still do sometimes, not every time, but sometimes you can really make a pass with a nice angle that it's so hard to defend.
You have to know when.
You have to know when. Exactly.
Okay, so with the equipment, how did you do the transition to the heavyweight, to first the fist, and now I don't know what kind of bases do you play now. So how was your process with the equipment?
Well, it was easy to move from the heavyweight to the fist of figures, because it was more steady. You didn't have to paint and balance; they were all the same. So this was easy to change. And I used them until I stopped playing. I stopped playing sometimes between 98 and 99, because my 2 kids were born. I was doing well in business. I was really involved, so I didn't play for almost 10 years. And then my son, Paul, I didn't play, but I wanted to help in the Grand Prix of Issy-les-Moulineaux. So I went, on occasions to see the friends and everything. And then my son Paul became 12 or 11, and he wanted to play. He wanted me back in the game too. And then Axel and Théo Modeste were starting to play too. So I went back in the game and started with my fisted figures, but most of them were broken back then. So then I moved back to now I use the CC2 dynamic when I play on extreme pitch and sometimes on astro pitch. And I can also use the Colpani pitches on occasions, but I'm not a big fan of trying many bases. I think at some point you have to focus on something when you're happy with and focus, because I see many players coming back in the game, or even players that have never left the game, and they try new figures every week, pretending they will become a champion with a new base. I think
I agree. I came back in 5 years ago. I tried 2 or 3 times. I get my one once, and now that's the ones that I'm playing. And you have to focus on this one. You will be better if you are not changing, because there are not two bases that are the same.
Exactly. So I tried the other day some Pro Evo from one of our PUC player, and they are nice. Maybe I will give a go in a few months. I don't know, but I'm not playing so much now myself, and I'm happy with the CC2 dynamic. So I don't see the point in changing, really.
Okay.
Changing for changing is not.
There's no sense. No? Are you still analyzing the game, or just as a teacher? I would say.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ricardo. I'm analyzing mostly as a teacher. I try to put it that way. I try to learn how the game is played now, because in France I think we have missed one point in terms of learning the game. We have missed maybe 10 or 15 years when the game really evolved, and most of us are still playing like back in the 90s. We're playing a too open game. So I'm looking at the way the game is played now, not only by the top players, because most of the top players are still playing fast, but some players, and there's dozens, hundreds of very good players in the middle, and those ones are not playing so fast. So we have to learn to play against them with the same technique as is required now in 2026. So I'm looking at games in that respect to learn how to play with the current game.
Okay, so you put a thing here that I forgot to answer. I had to ask, and it was a very interesting question for me. That it's going back to France in the 90s and that it was a huge loss of players I suppose it was in the late 90s and beginning of the 20s, like it happened in Spain, and I suppose in everything in Europe. What do you think that happened there? It was for PlayStation, because most of the time was for video games, or I don't know.
Well, for me, it's not about video games. It's about, for France and probably Spain, because I think Spain also started in the early 80s, like France with the Waddington or the distributor putting money into the game. Italy started before. So Italy had that hole before us, because in the middle of the 90s, Italy was going down before us.
Okay.
And we started to lose players after Italy, as you said, late 90s, mostly because we were in our 30s, family, work, kids. So most of the organizers stopped playing, and there was nobody to bring new clubs and new players. Whereas now, most of us are coming back into the game. We are in our 50s or early 60s. I'm 58, 59 soon, and we have new players coming that are not new. They are 50 or 55, like some of the players we have in PUC or in Boss, in Maison Lafitte, and they come back with their kids or nephew or cousins and we are the second or sometimes the third generation, which is better now. It's easier because we don't have kids to raise, or let's say our professional life is not ahead of us. There are still many good things ahead of us, but this is most in the back, so we can come back into the game and give something to the game that we couldn't give in the late 90s.
Okay, it was by the age of the players and the organizers, basically, no? So,
Exactly, because the video games, um, we have opposed Subuteo to video games for many years, especially back in those days, and still now. But I have many friends that have kids that are addicted to video games, and they still play Subuteo, because for them it's like FIFA in 3D. They call that FIFA 3D. So it's the other move is from Subuteo to video games, and then from video games to Subuteo 3D. They want to play with real friends next to them. They want to share something, emotions that you can't share with a computer.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Returning to your playing style, what were your biggest influences in the game when you began and after you began?
You mean the other players that influenced me?
Yeah.
Fuso, Hoffman, Frignani.
So the big names, no, the big names from the 80s. You get something playing.
Yeah, Frédéric Lézervant was a very good junior French player. He stopped in 1984, but he was just 1 year older than me. He was really, really good. I trained a lot with him back in the days, and he was amazing. His shooting was fantastic with the HW. He was shooting so well from anywhere. He was a legend of the shooting back then. So I tried to shoot as well as he did. And of course, yeah, Renzo, Christophe Fuso for his attacking style. Thierry Vivant, I can't say really, because he was somebody to try to copy in the defensive area, but I've never been a defensive player anyway. So.
Okay. Since I came back playing in 2020, I've noticed that you're often promoting videos about Carlos Flores and basically Carlos Flores or some other big players. How important do you think players like this are for our sport?
I think Carlos is surely is the GOAT of all time, because not only he is good, really good when he has to be good, but it's been 15 years that he's a legend. So I've been on the top of the game for 2 or 3 years, and I know how much focus it needs. And he is amazing, and he only lost maybe 2 or 3 games every year for many years. And what amazes me most with Carlos is that he can focus on the attack, and his attacking style is incomparable. But then when he loses the possession, he can really make a pressure very close to the ball immediately. So he can switch in his mind from hitting the ball to being this close to the ball. And this amazes me, because most of the players, of the best players, would be either attacking players or defensive players, but he's both.
Yeah, and he has improved a lot in defensive style in the last 4 or 5 years. So
Yeah, it's he's good. He's putting pressure everywhere in the pitch, and of course the videos. When I have the chance to film him and put some videos, because I have that mind of this attacking mind of trying things. I almost know when he will score, and if you see even the latest videos of the French major, the sudden death and everything, when I have time, I'm always at the right place at the right time with Carlos. Even when he played Samuel Bartolo back in Framery some years ago with the sudden death, the Champions League also against Claudio Latorre. Of 4 tables, I am at the right place when Carlos plays at the right time, because I can. It's almost as if I can read his mind.
yeah,
when he plays.
You can sense when he will score. No? There's one video that you made with Claudio Latorre. I think it was in Paris a couple of years ago, that he scores 2 seconds again from this area. Claudio Latorre said, "No, it's a free kick." And
yes, exactly. It was in the Champions League in Belgium last year or year before last, and he scored 2 goals in 30 seconds.
Yeah,
and so
that's incredible.
Incredible. So there was only, as you said, 2 seconds left in the second goal. He was in his own half. He threw the ball, bang, and that was the second goal. This one. So, of course, most of the guy who film after filming the first goal would move to another table. But because it was Latorre, I knew Latorre would try something. So it was either Latorre would try something and score, or Carlos would get the ball back and try something and score. So I knew something would happen again.
Yeah, and what do you think about having this kind of players, not only Carlos, but Luca Colangelo? How important is this for
for me, it's... Ricard, it's a very important question, and not just a question. I mean, the answer is, if we want to attract kids, it has to be spectacular. Yeah. It has to be fast. It has to be spectacular. It has to be from one goal line to the other goal line fast, and not just a possession game where you can keep the ball for 3 minutes. I don't mean to say it's not hard to keep the ball for 3 minutes. But it's not what kids want now. So if we want to attract kids, they have to see Carlos play, Claudio Latorre play, Luca Colangelo play, Mato Ciccarelli play. Even if he's a bit slower, he can still play fast, and he plays on all the playing area. Samuel Bartolo play, Christophe Deur play. You have to see amazing things and tricks. Things that can be on TikTok for 15 seconds.
Yeah, that's the new world, and we are trying to promote a club in a small village there in Catalonia, and when they see these kind of videos, even there's an amazing game from Carlos with Amberny from your club in Pont-Laurens like 10 years ago, that he has 2 or 3 goals that are absolutely amazing, and when you show the people this, they wow, you can do that.
Exactly. I also participate in many football camp training sessions, animation with Laurent Fournier. And when you have 30 minutes with the kids, new kids that don't know anything about Subbuteo table football, you have to show them things that make sparkles in their eyes. So it has to be chip shots, spinning, volleys, these kind of things. And then from 10 kids, you can get 1 or 2 that will be interested in playing more. But if you try to learn them the full 70-page rule book, then forget it.
Yeah, because it's boring for them.
It's boring.
I will jump to this part of the kids because it's very interesting. We will go to the organizational part afterwards because I think that it now enters best. So you are now in Puig in the Paris Université Club. Let's explain us. How did you manage to create a new club, especially for young people, in a place that important in Paris? For people that is not from France or not from Paris, doesn't know the history of Paris University. So
when I was elected French president, my first goal was to, let's say, create new clubs, of course, and create clubs that mean something in the world of sports. So it could have been, and that's still in my mind, and we have still opportunities with professional football clubs like Saint-Etienne, RC Lens, Metz, maybe Marseille. We have some contacts with Olympique Marseille. So this may happen sometime. But I had a contact with Puig and Stade Français and Racing. We were 3 of the most famous and oldest clubs in Paris, multi-sports clubs. And after 2 or 3 emails and many months, the president of the PUC answered me by mail and said, okay, we can meet and you tell me about your project. I found out just recently, but I will carry on and tell you the story just after. So we met, and I came with a half a pitch and some pics on TikTok and everything and videos. And I was really enthusiastic, like I can be sometimes, to talking about table football. And then after 15, 20 minutes, he said to me, okay, what do you need to start a new section here? So 4 tables and how much it costs, okay, blah, blah. And he said, okay, I'm okay, but I'm only okay if you, me, take care of it. So I said, okay, so if I want the new section, I have no choice. I have to start from scratch and by myself. Originally, I wanted to train somebody to do it, somebody from the PUC, but he said to me, I'm okay, but you have to take care of it.
Okay.
So it started, and for the first Wednesdays and Saturdays, there was nobody coming. I mean, there was some players coming from other sections, football, tennis, judo, athletic, whatever. And they would come, pass by, and I was chipping the ball, and I was making tricks, and, by myself. And then when kids stopped, tried, and a few minutes and went, and then the next week he came back for more time, and gradually we started. We now have about 15 players regularly, kids and adults, on Wednesdays and Saturdays. But it took a while, and it needed really some resilience and perspicacité. I don't know how to translate that in English. And commitment.
Yeah.
Because if you just expect people to turn up and stay from day one, that doesn't happen. And then we had an evening about a month ago, the General Assembly of the full club, because we have 10,000 members of many sections here, 42 different sports. So we had the General Assembly the other day and some drinks after the AGM. And then I met Bernard with other players and other key people of the club. And then he introduced me to the others, and he said, Eric came to me 3 years ago, and he said, originally I just wanted to meet him by kindness and tell him that I wasn't interested. And he said, after 10 minutes, he returned the situation and said, okay, then we start.
Okay, that's what shows enthusiasm, no? Shows your enthusiasm.
Yes, because he thought that if I can convince him, I would convince other people to join.
And you did.
And I did.
Players, and I know how difficult it is.
Yes, so some of them are not licensed to the French Federation. Some of them just come and turn up. But I have that. I think the sport and the people expectations have changed. People don't necessarily want to pay for 1 year, and that's okay. We want to have more people. So those who want to play competitively will pay the French Federation fee. But those who really want to enjoy here and come on occasions, that's okay. That's fine.
That's what we are doing in Catalonia. Me and my brother that created a Catalan circuit. No, that there are 5 tournaments and you don't have to pay anything. So people who doesn't want to federate can have
exactly
their own kind of tournaments. No?
We have no choice. We have no choice of be a little more open, and the numbers we talk about are different. We don't always talk about the number of paying members. We want to talk about the number of players.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So what are your recommendations to teach young players, especially kids? Now, after that, we will ask about adults because it's a little bit different. But
it's a bit different. Well, kids, I think the major thing, as I said, is for them to have fun and try to see things that they can see on a football ground. I mean, volleys, and sometimes chipping the ball, and have rules that can be close to football. So I think we have to have the direct free kick back at some point in table football, because we went too far away from football. Playing Subito is of course it's not the same game as football, but sometimes our rules are too far from football now, I think. And especially for kids and for adults, I often have some journalists or friends that come for the first time, and they don't understand the rules, and some of the things are not logic at all. For somebody who don't know the game, it's not just about what is meaningful, but it's about what is logic. When a figure goes out behind the goal and you put it back in the middle line, this is strange. When you hit the crossbar and the ball goes back in your own shooting area, the throw in is for your opponent. That is not football. So for kids, I think they have to have fun. So I teach them how to chip. I teach them how to make volleys. And under 12, they really have to have fun. This is the most important thing. And 2 times 15 minutes is really long for kids. They can't focus for 15 minutes 2 times. So we make short games, or we make just one half. 15 minutes, one way. And we change.
There used to be 10 minutes in the 80s sometimes.
Exactly. So I'm pushing that even at FISTIF. I think 10 minutes for kids would be good. They start at the same time as the other categories. They stop 5 minutes before, and then the kickoff at the second time, the same time. And this is not hard to make. It's easy.
For under 12, it's especially important. Yeah.
Exactly. And the really good ones under 12, they score so many goals. I saw in Mons, there was 2 very good Italians that would score 5, 6, 8 goals. I mean, 10 minutes is okay. They can still score 4 or 5.
I agree, yeah. So what about adults? What do you think is the best way to approach an adult to come to the game?
For 3 years now in the French Federation, for the new adults, I'm not talking about old players coming back. I'm talking about new adults. We have created what we call the novice category, which is the first 3 years of license. They play a French championship between them.
Okay.
So if they can play against me in a tournament, but they also have a French championship and sometimes regional tournaments just for them, less than 3 years of licensing. So
that's cool. That's a nice idea.
They win 1-0, they lose 2-1, but still they play and they enjoy. They can try things, they can have fun. Whereas if they come in big tournaments or against players that play for 15 years, 20 years, even somebody who played in the 80s or 90s that come back now, they will be better than those guys who only start. Yeah. So I think this has really helped us get new players, adults, and keep them because they can have fun playing these kind of events. We don't have enough of these events. I hope we will get more in the next year.
Okay, so if you have seen the Juan Carlos Granada interview, he talks about his exercise bursts, no? So training method. You told sometime that you have your Excel file with all the...
Yes.
You do this for new players? You show them this, or you are more of a free will from everybody?
No, I show some of the things gradually.
Okay.
And the same for the rules. We don't teach them all the rules at once. We teach them gradually. We don't want to fright them. We want to keep them. So most of the things would be the passing, because for me it's so important, the passing. Also, see the consequence of the figure you just move, where it goes after touching the ball. This kind of décalage, the way I often talk about Giroud. We have the French number 9 of the French team, Olivier Giroud, who is a number 9, very classic number 9. But if I convert this into table football, he is the one who can block the defense, and you can use that Giroud exactly the same on a table football pitch, using that attacker to prevent the defender to come close to the ball. So I try to show them, even the kids, how to play with a Giroud on your team. And if you don't have that Giroud in the first place, then when you play, you can put your Giroud can get at the right place to stop the defense. So this kind of things we're trying to focus on. And as I said, I intend to have more of the nowadays game maybe keeping the ball a bit more. But first, it's not my way of playing, so I don't feel really comfortable doing this. And also, I don't have fun doing this, so I guess maybe other players don't have fun doing that too, but maybe I'm wrong. It's just different personalities.
No, it's okay. Everyone has to teach what he is better for him, no? So you cannot teach something that you are not good.
Exactly.
Okay, let's go back to the organizational side.
Uh-huh.
In the early 90s, you were one of the pioneers of the interest of creation, the International Federation. You talked about this. How was this idea? You talked that you got this idea playing FISA and ETF.
Yes.
So how was the process to?
The process was to organize. Gradually, first was to talk with people from both sides when I was traveling to tournaments, and I wanted to show that my playing style would allow me to compete well on both sides. So I was my credibility as a good player was on both sides. In fact, we played a tournament in Berlin, in Germany, with Christophe Fuseau with a big ball and everything of ETF, and we both reached the finals against the Germans, all the top Germans and Belgians and everything. And in the final, I think he beat me 5-2 or something like that. But we played like in FISA with a big ball and everything. It was going all over the place, very fast. So we showed that we could play both in a nice way. And every time I was talking with the key people on both sides. And then Willy Hoffman, Laurent Garnier, and I decided to call a meeting. It was in Lyon in 1988, where three of us, Jan-Piet Verhoeven of Germany, of Netherlands was there. There was a Belgian guy. There was, I think, six of us were there. I don't remember who the others were, but there were Verhoeven, Garnier, Hoffman, myself, and another two. Don't remember. So it was the first, let's say, construction of FISTF in the early days, 1988 in Lyon, and then there were other meetings. We included more players from various countries. Of course, with my magazine Mouvement International, I was giving the word to players from everywhere, from Germany, from Spain. Arturo Martinez was our correspondent for Spain, and I had some news from Italy. Everything, all the guys from there were new. I started the first world ranking. This is the first world ranking was in my magazine, and of course, in the world ranking, as a top player, you want to be better. So you want to, let's say, gather in the same energy, you know. So it helped create that kind of circuit. And then I think we were lucky because Waddington at the time sold to Hasbro, and Waddington also, even though Travis Spencer did a great job as a product marketer for Waddington, Hasbro didn't want to spend too much on Subutio anyway. So I think it was the right time for us from the sport to take over from Waddington. And the Congress to found FISTF was, I think, in 1992, with the statutes approved by all the countries. Because I was a very good player at the time, I was only 25. I didn't want to join the board. First, because I was a great player at the time, and I didn't want a conflict of interest anymore. I wanted to at least play, and I started my club in Issy-les-Moulineaux and everything. And I had some ambition as a player when I was 25, of course. And also Laurent Garnier was a French member of that committee. And the first president was Raymond Kronberg of Belgium, with Laurent Garnier as the secretary and Willy Hoffman as the director of sports. So it was a good team that really did a good job as a start. And back then I stopped my magazine, and Laurent Garnier and I worked together to in a better way. I thought after a few years we managed to work better together than in the early days. And I think he also understood that you can't do something without the players. You can't do something without the best players. You have to work with the best players. And so, this lead us back to the question you were asking about Carlos Flores a bit earlier on. I think for me now, and even back then, FISTF and our federation have to promote the best players because they are the best ambassadors and they deserve to be seen as top level sportsmen. So they have to be, let's say, starred as top players because they are in the first place. They practice like professional of any sports. They learn the game of opponents. They learn tactics. They learn how to become better every day. Like in snooker, like in football, like in every physical sport or mind games, mind sports. So my vision is really that we need competitions, rules, and key figures to drag us to the next level.
So the next level to be to have sponsorships like they have in snooker and stuff like that. So in this first period you were not involved in the board. Then you quit in 1998. You said before 99.
No, I was not in the first board of FISTF. That started in 92. I was in the French Federation, and I was still doing my magazine that I was sending to the players across Europe and Austria and Australia and USA to gather the group of players and the federations and show that we need a unified sport. And then when FISTF was created, I was not part of that first board, as I said, because I wanted still to be involved in the sport. And in fact, I lost the final of the World Cup in 1994 and the European Championship in 95. So I was really doing well at the time, as far as my level, playing level. And I was really enthusiastic playing the game. I think it was really entertaining seeing me playing at the time. Unfortunately, there is not many videos of the game back then, but it was really fun playing and playing well. And then I stopped, as I said, in 98, 99, more or less. I think my last French Cup final was in 98. I won the French Cup final in 98. I have a pic with my son, Paul. He was 6 months, and I have my big trophy that is just as big as him. And I think that's my last appearance between 98 and 2009.
And then when you came back, did you get involved in the federation or?
Not at the start. When I came back, I was my kids were not really big. Paul was 12, Luc was 10, and my daughter was 4 or something like that, 4 or 5. So I didn't take part in the French Federation. It was run by Thomas Pontet and Emmanuel Gorgette mostly. I was really sad to see that there was so few players left. Most of the players I knew from the early days, so there were no new players, no new clubs almost. And so, and I had my own company also at the time, so I was really, busy doing things, family things and professional things with my own company. And my first comeback as an organizer was to become FISTF sport director between 2016 and 2021, 5 years maybe, as FISTF sport director. That was a good experience. I wanted to change things from the inside. I stopped the World Cup every year because I think the World Cup is mostly with Europeans, and I wanted that it's more global. If it's a World Cup, it has to be world, not just Europe. So to enable more the Canadians and the USA and Brazil and Australia and Japan to come every other year is better. The other thing is, for me, if you go in a venue with 6 categories, individual and teams, in every venue you have 14 or 15 or 60 world champions. The name world champion become, there's so many world champions. It has to be something unique again. So every 2 years for the World Cup. And then I split it also the Champions League in two, the Europa League and Champions League in 2 different competitions, because when it was the same in the first round, some team would lose on purpose to play the Europa League and win the Europa League eventually. It happened 2 or 3 times, which is not what the sport should be about. You don't have to lose on purpose. Yeah, there were a few things like that were done, and of course there are still many things to be done to keep close to what the people expect. And when I say what people expected, not just our current players, because for me, same with the French Federation. If we want more players, we have also to focus on what players outside expect, not just the ones we have. The ones we have, we know them for 40 years or 50 years. We know what they want. They just want to be selfish and play between them. But there are also players outside that would be keen on playing, and we need to address what they want.
Okay, I agree.
How to attract them.
And especially you are also being have a vision of the game outside Europe, no? And in America and Australia, in Asia. So you have always put focus on this type of players that are more isolated than in Europe. They have very
yes. It's as you say exactly, and they maybe they don't have the same equipment. It's not so easy for them to get the bases from Tekiati or from Dogali or from Daniel Shane because it's so far away. They have less players. They have long distances, between Japan is a very big country. Australia, is like a continent. USA, the same. I think for us, when we are in our, let's say, little World Cup mostly means Europe. But when I talk to people outside and when I started to talk with PUC to organize the World Cup means players from all over the world, not just Europeans. Even if the best players would be in Europe, you have to have players from Singapore, from Australia, from South Africa, from Tunisia, from Japan, And this is the unique thing about table soccer is that we can attract people from all over the world in one venue for 1 week, for 1 weekend. I mean, if they can come for 1 week, we will organize for them some club nights the week before the World Cup here in PUC and in Maison Lafitte on the Tuesday, Wednesday, and club nights against the clubs, so they can play more than just a first round on Saturday morning. and I think this is very important, and it's a way to help them discover more and create new friendship. This is a.
Okay, then after you left the International Federation, you became the president of the French Federation, and it's obvious in the last 5 or 6 years the growth.
5 years, yes.
The growth in France has been amazing. There are a lot of players coming back, new clubs. I remember Avec Assis has come back a little longer. Ludovic Bourreau that is playing with us in the Catalan circuit.
Yes, Ludovic Bourreau came, yes.
So Juan Carlos Granados told me in his interview that one thing that is very peculiar of your way of approaching the federation is that you pick up the phone and you begin calling people and.
It's mostly emails. I don't really pick up the phone in the first place, but it's sending emails. I try all sorts of platforms to contact football players, former football players. I tried LinkedIn. I use Facebook. I use TikTok. TikTok is not for football players, but of course, when you have some TikToks that have 50,000 views, 100,000 views, 1 million views, when you contact journalists or even football players and show them that it works, then it's easier, let's say, to talk to them. And then I became really good friend with Laurent Fournier, who played for Paris Saint-Germain and won the Cup Winners' Cup with Paris Saint-Germain. And he played for Olympique de Marseille, Saint-Etienne. And Laurent is now a friend, a good friend, a close friend. And I go in his football camp many times a year to train kids. And of course, with the pics and with what we did with Laurent, it's easier for me now to contact more players, but it's been a process, it didn't happen overnight. It was a long time process, and I approached them, those players, slowly, gradually. It's building on and on and on. And now with Vincent Guérin, Daniel Bravo, Raphaël Varane, we have many football players that they know about table football. They have played maybe just a few flicks. Mathieu Debuchy also, who played for Lille and Arsenal, and of course for France. So we have some picks, and now it's easier for me to contact the new ones and show them that we don't want to use them on a daily basis. I will not ring them every day saying, "Come here, go there, and take pics and everything." I try to do it in a smart way. I also want them to have fun when they come. They have to have fun. They have to be happy to come, and then I can say that. Something about Christian Lopez. Christian Lopez was the number 5 of Saint-Etienne in France in 1978. Saint-Etienne is my favorite club, and he was my hero when I played libero back in the time. And I sent them a message on Facebook, and there was no news for many months, maybe 3 or 4 months. And then one night I got a message back from him saying, "This is my number, you can contact me." I was in shock, after so long waiting. I didn't send more. I just sent one. And then I phoned just right away, like a groupie, like a fan. And he said, "I'm sorry that it took so long to answer you, but I took my recommendations," he said. So before writing back, he saw my Facebook. He saw that we did something. He rang some of other players that I contacted first, and then he asked me back. So it's a long process, and we went.
You need to have a network of people that know who you are, what are you doing, that you are a trustable person. So.
Exactly. Yeah, trustable person is the key word, and also that you won't use them on a daily basis. Christian Lopez came for one club night in Le Canet in Cannes. He said to me, "I don't have much time. I will only stay for 15 minutes," and he stayed 2 hours with us. So he was really happy to play and talk and everything. We took pics, and then those pics can help. That doesn't necessarily attract new players in the first place, but for players of all age, of our age, 50 or 45 or 60, it's like a reminiscence of the past. And Subito for us is also a reminiscence of the past. So it brings us back to those years, football years. And if you get more adults to play, you get more new organizers for tomorrow. And if we get more organizers for tomorrow, we won the game.
Yeah, I agree. And you have to have a background and a history in order to go to the media and to have something to show them.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more, because now when I contact media, I put some extracts of photos or videos of I select them every time. It's a different email. I have my base, but every time it's a different email, customized email for somebody I talk to, different pics, different video link. That I do, saying that we have made some animation with Christian Lopez, with Mathieu Debuchy, with Laurent Fournier, with Vincent Guérin, and they're so surprised, and then it's a good way of talking about football and table football and how and why are they interested in table football, because with table football you can show on those small pitch. You can play like Jurgen Klopp with Liverpool. You can play very fast like Carlos Flores, being Jurgen Klopp Liverpool. You can play like Guardiola with Manchester City, moving one side to the other, like a bit like Mato Ciccarelli. So when you can show this analogism, then it makes full sense.
Yeah, especially in people that has retired and has the game in their mind because
in
they
mind.
Played 15 years or something like that.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have how is the federation structured? So you are the president, but do you have extra help? I suppose because
Thomas Ponte is the secretary. He was president in some years before. Cédric Pandolfi is the treasurer. We have also Eric Dujardin, who is taking care of the website, the update of the website. For the structure, we need to change something, but for the, let's say, the content, Eric Dujardin is doing a good job. Then now we have Raphaël Pommier, who is newly appointed as a manager for the sports. We have Axel Modeste, who is the, let's say, the sélectionneur, is taking in charge the French team for the next World Cup. And we still need more help, of course. We always need help.
Yeah, that's what happened. No. We're a small group of people and there are so many things to do. But
yeah, the thing is, we need some help that share the same vision. And because some of the new players coming, they need to be, let's say, taught. Because we made mistakes in the past, we don't want to make them the same mistakes again. That's an important point for me. For example, one of the things that Laurent Garnier was doing, every time there was a new club with somebody involved, he would appoint him as a vice president of the French Federation, give him tons of work, and after 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, the guy left because it was just too much pressure. Yeah. So my vision as a manager is to do it gradually, and those who want to do more, they can do more, but first take good care of your club.
Yeah, I agree. And you have to know who has this kind of I don't know how to call it,
ability
or virus that to organize things, to do things, because not all the players can do.
Sure. It's exactly the same with the demos. I mean, for the demos, we have people who are okay to do demos, but they don't succeed too much. And then we have people who could succeed, but they don't want to. So our next key project, a big project, is to supply table football boards and teams to 5-a-side football camps or padel football camps. With a group that is called Convi Group. They're a voluntary group of 20 sites around the country. We will provide them, hopefully before the World Cup, the Football World Cup in June, hopefully before. We will provide them with one table football camp field with the signs on the fences, with the QR codes going to the basic rules, the federation shop, so they can look for the rules, they can look for the shop, they can look for our website, and they can play for free before playing football with their friends or after playing football with their friends. And with this, I intend to enlarge our player base and probably attract players over 50, but also players around 30 or 35, because we miss this kind of players. We don't have many players that are 30 or 40 years old. We miss that generation, let's say. And I hope that with this we can attract some of them and also use those tables for potential new clubs.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting idea. Yeah. You said recently on an interview that the group of players that were in France like in a tube shape, and now we are like in a rugby shape, because there are more Division Two and Division Three players, and it usually was more different. So how can you explain this for people?
You mean the level?
Yeah.
We used to have a pyramid.
Yeah.
It's a bit the same for the international level. I would say that maybe the top players are not really stronger than 20 years ago, but the average level is so dense. The density is huge because the equipment has helped even new players become good fast. So we have that density too. But as I said earlier, maybe in France we play too much like in the 90s. We play because we missed that generation that is between 30 and 40 years old that have known the equipment in 2000, let's say, or late 90s, that have learned how to play with the Profi base and these kind of figures from day one. We don't really have that generation.
Okay. Like people in more like Carlos,
exactly. We don't have that. Yes, Luis Mateos and so on. We don't have that generation. We have the guys like me, and we have the guys like Theo Modeste or my son Paul or a few others that are 28, 26. So we don't have the ones between 30 and 40. And so we teach the new players to play like in the 90s. We have skipped that period of time, which is not great for the level of our best players. I think it doesn't help. So we need to work harder to catch up. We need to work harder to catch up, and we need to learn a little more how the game is played. Maybe Axel Donval and Jean-Marie Amberny would be the ones who get close to that. Axel Donval and Jean-Marie Amberny, but they are also players from the early 90s. They're not players from the late 90s.
Yeah, so they begin with Subbuteo, not with table football directly. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Going back to the federation, I read some months ago or a year ago so that you now have a headquarters.
Yes. I was there this morning because the work inside is not yet finished, painting and wall painting and everything. Well, the idea was to, before the World Cup, I really wanted to have a dedicated headquarters, not an address at some of our players' house or in one of the club like PUC. It could have been in the PUC because it's easy to get an address here. But I wanted to have a place that is different from our clubs, that is the home of the French Federation, that can be a museum for Subbuteo too. To be honest, I had good meetings with the city council, the mayor, as we say here, thanks to a good contact of mine that introduced me with that mayor. And I said, look, we don't have money, but we can promote your town and create a club in that town and create one event every year, French Championship or maybe International Open, and get players from different countries or from all over the country in your town. And I need some, place, an apartment or a house for free for some years before we get enough money to pay rent. And he said, okay. So for 3 years, we have that place without paying any rent. We just pay electricity. We pay for the water. And that house was free for 4 years. The mayor the city has acquired that house because they didn't want a kebab to be installed in that house. And he said to me, I'm happy to give you that place because I don't want a kebab in there. And so the commitment we have is to, of course, have that museum and make some events once or twice a year and promote his town in the social networks. In fact, this is where also the TikToks and the YouTube and everything comes, because when I met him, I showed him the number of views we have on many TikToks. And so the next time we make the French Championship in La Morlaix, there'll be more promo about the town, and we will make the inauguration probably in May or June with Laurent Fournier and one of the Miss France. That was Miss France about 15 years ago. She's a good friend of the Fournier family, so she'll probably come, and other football players. So, it's a win-win situation, because the house, instead of being empty, will be clean and refurbished and nice, and so it's a win-win situation.
And what so you will do a museum there, and you will do what other activities do you think about the place?
The place has 3 floors of about 40 square meters each. So on one floor we will have the shop with old stuff and new stuff, like the HWs and boxes, Subbuteo boxes, and it can be, let's say, open every month or 1 or 2 times a month for the shopping itself. Then we will have on the first floor 2 or 3 tables for the local club that we intend to create. Okay. And we already have players around that are keen, and agreements with the football club. The football club, I met this morning somebody from the football club. They really expect us to make demos with the football club too. So they want some of their kids to play Subbuteo and learn from the tactics and everything. So we will get some kids from the football club. And then on the first floor, there will be, more the museum side and stadium and, these kind of things.
Okay, perfect. One other thing that you have been doing this 4 or 5 years is a lot of media coverage. I remember when I came the first time in the Maison Lafitte 2 or 3 years ago, there was Le Parisien there,
yes,
taking pictures. You have been in the TV like 2 or 3 times at least in this couple of years ago.
Yes.
You always told that the importance of the media coverage of our sport. So how can you approach that important? Le Parisien is famous all around the world. So how do you do that in order to ask in Spain or in other countries? How can they manage to achieve what do you achieve in these years?
It's also a process. It's everything has to be nice. We want to have nice shirts, nice club shirts, nice tables. Thanks to the system of Paul, we have these tablets and everything that is amazing. Many sports would like to have the same, even rich sports. So the journalists can see this, and most of the time we also talk about those football players that may come or that will come or that have come, and the number of nations coming, the number of players coming, the quality of our young players. For example, at PUC, we have the French champion under 12, Augustin, that has been 2 or 3 times on TV now. And of course, the name of PUC as you said earlier, it means something in the world of sports here in this country, because the club is this year 120 years old. We had some Olympic champions of fencing, of athletic, of judo. It's a really big name. So this really helps. But also, I also try with the emails to show bullet points of what we can provide. The intergenerational thing is important too. You can play table football with your kids, and there's not so many sports that you can play together with your kids or travel with your kids. This is really critical, because after COVID, they look for activities that the kids and the parents can do together. And you can play table football. You can practice together. You can travel together. You can talk to the media that, by the way, in our club, we have 2 or 3 generations and we travel together and we play as a team, but individually we play each in our category. I play veteran, my son play open, my daughter can play in the female. So, this is the team, there is the team spirit and the family spirit that you can put forward. And of course, the top players of the world coming in the major. We had, I think, 17 of the 20 best players of the world ranking, which is just amazing. So this has a meaning to the media too.
Okay. You have been a lot of times a little bit critical about this thing about expanding the game with Subuteo Tradizionale, also about putting all these things. I agree a lot with you with that but if you can explain your point of view.
Yes. Thank you for asking, because you just said expanding the game. For me, it's reducing the game, and I will explain why. Okay, I understand that some players from the old days preferred to play with spinning and everything. I understand, because the game, the equipment and the rules are different now. And as a player, I prefer to play in the 90s as a player. First, because I was better than now, but it was more spectacular too. That's okay. But for me, this is relevant to the rules. So if we adjust some of the rules we have now, we can go back to something not similar, but close to what it was in the 90s, more spectacular, closer to football. Now, playing the traditional Subito is like playing tennis with your racket with wooden racket, like Björn Borg or McEnroe or Panatas or whatever. It's just something from the old days. And I'm not nostalgic of the old days. I mean, and there were some nice things, there were some great things, but if we want to look forward, we have to think forward, not think back. So for me, if some countries want to have traditional Subito tournaments, that's okay. If they think it's okay for them, that's fine. But for us in France, or even for FISTF or for the World Cup, I don't see, because we all have a different view of what is old Subito or traditional Subito. For you and in Spain, or for me in France, it would be the 80s. The rules from the 80s with nylon pitch. But then from somebody else, it will be the cotton pitch with the big ball. For somebody else, it will be the flats from the 70s. For somebody else, it will be the Italian rules. What Italian rules? The one from the south or the one from the north?
Yeah.
We can't agree.
Yeah, I agree, because you have to have if you have to go to the media, you have to have one only way of playing in order to have a background, to have a story. If you have three different ways of seeing the game.
Ricard, this is so important what you've just said. Thank you for saying this. Exactly. If you go to the media, or if you want to see the media for the World Cup here in September, and you happen to have players playing the same game with different rules from back in the 80s or 90s, playing with jeans or whatever, what is the credibility of that? There is no credibility.
Yeah, I agree. In the same way, I've also read you're being critical with WASPA, especially with the ranking thing. Not probably with the association itself, but so if you can explain this opinion too.
Well, WASPA was created by Vincent Coppenol after he left, or after he was out of FISTF. So for me, the origin is when you leave one place where you took part of a big part of FISTF as a president, and you didn't do it as you were president of FISTF, and you do it after. For me, the origin is wrong, first of all. Then when you say it's just something for friends and everything, and why not? But then why you world ranking? Because it's just for friends. If it's to play with your friends in your kitchen or in your living room, why not? But then no ranking. If there is a ranking, there is a competitiveness. And where is a competitiveness without referees, then you have big problems. I have some good friends in the game. I will not play against them without a referee. And it's not because they cheat, it's just because we both want to focus on the game.
Yeah.
Maybe they cheat a little bit too. Yeah. So for me, now what can be the lesson of WASPA is that Actually, it's a little like a novice thing. It's some players, they don't want to get involved too much in the federation, but they still want to play local events. So I suggested to Fistive to count in a different way, but to count the local events in the Fistive World Ranking, because they want to see their name in the world ranking. That's fine. Maybe we can get the first 5 local events in the world ranking.
Yeah.
Fistive.
Yeah, that's,
Maybe you can organize the Catalunya Championship, Catalunya Championship, and that would allow points in the world ranking. Why not?
well, what we did is that we created our own ranking in the Catalunya Championship. We do 4 or 5 tournaments and then a final, and that thing it works okay. I mean, it's like the novice level. You create your own way of doing. You don't need to be in a world ranking if you don't want to compete in the world in the fifth. So I understand. I understand the WASP, the understand of the amateur, but I agree that the ranking is not needed if you want to be an amateur.
And also exactly. And WASPA is a one-man thing. When Vincent stops, there's no more WASPA. Whereas Fistif is an organization, and I don't want to promote. It is the same as the traditional Subito. In fact, the French Federation is part of Fistif. We advertise about Fistif. If we want to be clear with the media, there is one federation, member of another federation. There can't be something different, slightly different whatsoever. This gives a haze, and this is lack of credibility for the whole organization.
Yeah, it looks more like an amateur game from people from different places that are not organized and stuff like that.
Exactly.
I agree. So a few weeks ago, you organized the major in Maison Lafitte in Paris. It was another great success in terms of participation. There were a lot of players, me included, and you made a big text explaining some points that you didn't like in Facebook. One of them that was the removing the consolation. That I don't agree. I will explain that. So could you explain about this, the reasoning behind these proposals?
The thing is, and it was the same in Framry, even worse because they had more players than we had. But if we want to have a time schedule that is met, let's say finishing at about 8 or 8:30 maximum the final, we have to fit everything with 12 rounds in one day. 12 rounds is the maximum you can fit in one day. Now, if not, you finish with 9, 9:30, 10:30 in the case of Framry, 9:20 for us. And you can't invite media to broadcast the finals. We have 20 players around the final instead of 250 in the venue before. You can't invite the mayor. You can't invite key people to watch the final because there's so few people. Plus, the players and the players who come for the event, they want to go back to the hotel. They want to have a dinner in town and enjoy with friends. And in Paris, that's okay because restaurants are open kind of late. But in some areas, if the final is at 10 o'clock, you don't eat at night. So this is the reason behind. The reason behind is a problem that we want to finish the 12 rounds, maximum 12 rounds at 8, 8:30, so that we can invite journalists, officials, TVs, and have many players watching because they know it will not finish too late. They have time to go take a shower and have dinner and enjoy the dinner. This is the main aim. And so I worked back and see what can we do to save time. We have a big problem with the number of players that some want to play the consolation, some don't. Most don't, in fact, in the major. So we have many games that are not played and some games that are played. Sometimes you play just one more game and you get to the semifinal. It happened in Maison Lafitte. So if the aim is to play more games, you can have friendly games. That's okay. Or maybe you can get, I don't know, maybe you can, because if we ask before the tournament who want to play the consolation in case, maybe that's another solution. I don't know. Maybe we can try that first. The other solution I suggested was to stop the extra time and go straight to the shootouts, because the extra time between last 32, last 16, quarterfinals, semifinals, potentially finals, 5 rounds with potentially 15 minutes lost, 20 minutes lost every time. It's almost 1.5 hours plus shootouts. So maybe we can try different things. This is not a solution I have in my pocket. I put all the potential solutions on the table. I don't know exactly what we can do. Consolation is one thing. Stopping extra time is another thing. Jean-Marie Amberny suggested one, I think is a smart thing, is maybe to, after the first round of shootout, if it's still equal, finish the sudden death of shootout from the center, from the shooting center, straight. Because sometimes you have 2, 3, 4 rounds of shootout. So every time you can save 5 minutes in every round, it helps you go back to the 8:30 p.m. final of the event.
Yeah, but
so
the consolation was the main problem to be delayed, or it was the number of players?
The consolation had one more round because we had 68 veterans and I think 125 opens. So we had to have, for the barrage thing, it added a 13 round instead.
Okay.
So maybe because we talk about that with the Framery and the Bologna guys, maybe one solution is to limit to 128 in open and 64 in the vets. And if we do that...
That used to be this way in the past, right? That was a limitation, and there was like some previous classification or stuff like that. I don't know.
Could be. But maybe if we limit to 128 in the open and 64 to the veterans, we can keep the consolation. Okay. So as I said, it's not... I don't want to get rid of the consolation because it's the consolation. I want to stick to the time schedule and stick to 12 rounds.
Yeah.
Understand me?
I understand now. Yeah. I think consolation is an important thing for, and a particular thing of table football, and an important thing to make a bigger sport. Now that we are a little sport, it probably can be rid of it if we grow like thousands of players.
Yeah. This is exactly why I suggested many different things. I'm not fully against, but I want to stick to that 12 rounds and finish at 8:30 for the reasons I just told.
Yeah, I understand now. It's an interesting question.
So many times in the tournaments we finish at 9, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and thank God in Maison Lafitte, the hotel is 2 minutes walk and the restaurant are 2 minutes walk. But in many events, you have to take the car back to your hotel. Then you go to the restaurant, 6 of you, it's closed, no tables,
Yeah, I agree. That's one question that I have for the World Cup, and we can do it now. No? That's one important thing that you are always pointing, no? To have hotels in a walking distance from the venue. You did that in Maison Lafitte the last 3 years. You did that now in the World Cup, even in a more centric Paris place.
Exactly.
So how do you accomplish this? Because in big cities, especially Paris, that is one of the biggest cities in Europe, that has to be very difficult, because it's
in Paris,
in Barcelona. So
in Paris, it's extremely difficult, and this is just possible because we have the Puc Subuteau section here. And Charletti Stadium, just next to me now, is let's say in the same area, and because I have good contact with the PUC president, or the sports president, and so we will get the stadium with a very decent price. If not, it's not possible to rent this place. That would cost about 15,000 to 20,000 euros. For the weekend, and not including the Friday, and we have to have the Friday to set up the venue, of course. So PUC also helps, of course, in that matter to get the venue for let's say a reasonable price. And yes, first it's important to play in venues that are close to the hotels and restaurants, exactly for the reasons we just talked, because we want the players to come to enjoy also the night with their friends, maybe to have more social things like we had in the past, because when you finish at 10, you don't want to spend another 2 or 3 hours meeting with people and drinking a beer. You just want to go back and sleep.
Yeah.
Now, if you finish at 8, 8:30, that's okay. You go to the hotel 5 minutes away from here, take a shower, go at the bar of the hotel. Easy.
Yeah, I agree.
Enjoy the night.
It's easier in the World Cup because the number of players is less, and you have the 64
Yes,
players.
but in Rome, we were so far away from the city and from the hotels and from everything. We had to pay for the taxis and everything. Rome was very expensive in that respect.
Yeah, okay. So one other thing that you introduced in the last years with your son Paul was the digital transformation with the tablets that you talked
He
about.
did, he did. He's the one to congratulate.
So how do you believe the technological leap is a problem now, and it's a mandatory to improve the digital transformation of our sport, especially in things like this, or maybe even this kind of interviews on YouTube for the new generations, or I don't know, new website for the federations and.
Yeah, the website we have needs to be, as I said, refurbished and make it nicer. Not about the content, but the way it is structured and the colors and everything. I'm not so happy with it now, but we will change before the World Cup for sure. The tablet and all the system that Paul created from a database. It's not an Excel program. It's a database. It helps manage the tournament with a cell phone just. This is really critical because it helps get rid of the game sheets that you fill and bring back to the table. Sometimes the result is wrong and not written in the right way and everything. So you save time. You get credibility for people to come that come in the venue, and also you have the automatic link with internet. I mean, if you score against me, Ricard, then the 3 points to you will be automatically on the internet, and somebody from Japan will see that you have 3 points and I have 0 at that time. And if I equalize, then it will be 1 point each at that exact minute. So this is just amazing, and we had some people from other sections at PUC that saw it 2 years ago when it was not as good as it is now, but it was already amazing. And they were just amazed by the quality of the program and how much it can bring to the sport, not just table football, but to other sports too. And I think it also gives us credibility, yes, as you say, in the world of sport. When we make the press conference here for the World Cup on May 4th, showing the logo and the display and everything with a journalist and football people, we will of course have the tablets to make a demo, show them how it works and everything, and that will also be 1 point of attraction to the media. Definitely.
Yeah, it looks very different when you see that. I've been 2 times in Maison Lafitte, and I've seen videos of Subutioland that have something similar.
It's similar.
And this makes this more professional. It looks
Yes.
like a professional sport, like snooker or like any other kind of sport.
Yes. And you know, just to carry on this point, but the guy who will make the streaming for us at the World Cup is somebody from a company that is making the streaming for the Billard French Federation. And he said to me, "Do you have something to follow the scores, because it's very important for the people that watch the video to see live scores and everything?" I said yes, because now Paul has developed something where you can include the live scores on your screen, because on internet it's live anyway.
Yeah. So regarding the World Cup, this is the first Paris World Cup, if I'm not wrong. Well, French World Cup, not only Paris.
Exactly, yeah. 4th French World Cup and 3rd time in Paris area.
You've been in the first one as a player. In 2007, you were not playing, so I suppose
No.
you were not even.
Les Herbiers, I wasn't. No.
In 2017, you were involved as in the international in the FISP. I assume.
I didn't play. But I organize, yeah.
You did organize, right? So what are different challenges you have seen in these 10 years of difference between 2017 and now?
The challenges. I think now, and maybe that's because we have the World Cup every 2 years, we have more players coming from outside Europe, which is great. But if you have two players from all the countries outside Europe, it means that you have less Europeans playing in open and vets. And so to qualify for the best Spanish or Italians or Greeks or Belgians, it's a little harder, meaning that we have some of the best players that will not take part in the individual World Cup. So this is, at the same time, it's not great, but at the same time, it's great because it means our sport grows. And it's like the Olympics where you don't have the best Americans running the 100 meters. They are not all of them don't participate to the athletic because they have to qualify in the top 3 Americans, and it's only the top 3. It's just the same for us. Yeah. So this is a challenge because it means that we have to convince the Europeans that the format, although it's a little hard when you see it 1 year after the other year, but in the long run for our sport, it's a good format.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and it's important the way that you are doing it. In Italy, they did it that way, and in England, I think so. The media streaming was very good in England a couple of years ago. It was very good. The media in Italy was good, but it's obvious that 1 hour by car from Central is not as good as it can be. The place in England was good for history point.
Yes. Yes. Tunbridge was
Tunbridge was perfect. And perfect. Now to have it in Central Paris is amazing for the sport and for the media. So, what do you think? What can the players that will be there can expect from this World Cup?
Okay. I don't know if you've seen the pictures of the venue. The venue is in a.
You made a video also.
I made some videos. So all the tables will be on the playing area, and on the playing area, we will only have the players and referees and a few accredited people that can be allowed to film. We won't have all the players around the tables, with the cell phones and everything. We want just a limit for each country, maybe 1 or 2 that will be allowed to have the cell phone and film in the 48 tables, plus the tables that will be in the streaming area that will just be allowed for the players and ref. And because the seats are easy to get to, all the other players will be in the seats in the stands. Okay. And the spectators too. Because PUC has so many members of all kinds of sports, we will make a big promo, especially for the football players of PUC. There's more than 1,000 football members here. So we hope that many of them will come sometime in the Saturday and the Sunday. We'll have some stands in the corridors surrounding the area that will sell equipment. We have already commitment from Daniel Shane, from Enrico Tecchiati, from Topspin, and of course the French shop. And we will have demos of other sorts of table football like tip kick and probably button football or chapas. Okay. We aim to have 1 board or 2 boards of each so that the media and the visitors can, let's say, see what table footballs are about, even though, of course, the focus is on our form of table football because it's the best. But I think showing other sorts of table football is also nice. For the media and for the football players, the professional players, they can also see other sports, and at least it's also maybe a way to enlarge our, let's say, not just media coverage, but together we could be stronger, even with the tip kick and the button football guys.
Yeah, we agree. In our club, we share space with the Button Club because in Catalonia, Button Club is recognized in the Football Federation because it's a history game, and we share the space. And most of the time, the people that say Button or Chapas, when they see table football, they open their eyes because it's more spectacular, more fast, more so.
Exactly.
It's another way, an entry level also. So.
And the other thing, and maybe I wasn't prepared to talk about this, but maybe that's the right time to talk about this. We will also, let's say, issue a list of Hall of Fame for table football players and organizers of 70 years of sport and organization. So I got some advice from people from all the countries, and we are almost we almost have a list of 400 players and organizers, mostly players, in the Hall of Fame. Actually, the idea was whistled to me in my ear by Massimiliano Nastasi many years ago, and he said, every sport has something like that, and why don't we have that and everything? And that's stayed in my mind, and I thought that maybe that's the right time to do it. And so, of course, it's not from number 1 to number 400. It's a full list, but I intend to have maybe something special for the top 20. And of course, this is kind of it's hard. It's not objective. There is some kind of subjectivity into that. But for the top 5, I'm pretty sure that everybody will agree about the top 5 all time. So I have a list of my top 5 all time, and I think everybody will agree on.
Okay.
So this is something we will show for the World Cup.
It would be nice. I agree. A Hall of Fame is very important, and it creates also what we'll be talking, a background, a history, and importance.
Exactly. Some of the young players, they tend to say, okay, no, you can't count this title or that title or these kind of things because the game has changed and so on. But the Tour de France started in 1903. The World Cup football started in 1930. The history is part of our sport, and this is also something we have to sell more.
Yeah. And every player is the GOAT in his period. I mean, Michael Jordan was the best in the 90s, and now LeBron James is the best probably the last 20 years.
Wembanyama for the next years.
Will be the next for sure. So getting back to the French Federation, you have been a strong focus on the club creation and creating new players. How do you do to develop a new club? You have talked about to bringing the football clubs to the Subbuteo clubs to try to make bonds there. So how difficult is to do that?
Let's be honest. Let's be fully honest. I had that discussion with Michel Barraud the other day because I managed to have Michel Barraud back at PUC for the second year now. And he said to me, what is the strategy to bring new clubs? What is my strategy? My strategy, because the game has an attraction everywhere. So it's not the problem of the game itself. We could create clubs everywhere. But we have to have the right people to take care of them, and the ones who are willing to take care of the club and develop the club. So the first thing is to find the organizers. And the organizer doesn't have to be an amazing player. It doesn't have to be an old guy like us. So let's say that from the new clubs we have for the past 3-4 years, most of them, the organizers, have come from the socials, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, from the videos, from our Facebook group. Some people come to us and say, I'm playing with my friends, I'm playing with my family, we're a group of friends, and we play. Or I'm a football trainer and I train my football club with kids I'm interested in. And these are the guys we look for. But we can't really find them if they don't come to us. Yeah. So the strategy is to make more media coverage, have the football, like I said, with Laurent Fournier, like Vincent Guérin, like Daniel Bravo, these guys, and the posts we make with them at some point attract organizers that will help us help them to make new clubs. So the strategy is because we can make demos everywhere, but if there is nobody when we left to take care of a potential new club, it will not work.
Yeah, that happens a lot of times.
Yeah. So the first thing is to create as many chances as we can with a post, with Facebook, with TikTok, the club in Lorraine, the new club in Lorraine, for example, came, one of the guy saw one of our TikTok and said, "Oh, this is great. I'm playing with my father-in-law and my brother." And so I write, "Oh, by the way, how many of you, how often do you play?" And blah, blah, blah. And then I went to see them. I took 2 tables to them, and then they're a club. The other guy in Lorient, Franck Jean, he's making Christmas Cup and Summer Cup with his friends for 30 years, 6 of them playing for 30 years. And the only way to find them, and I'm sure that there is plenty of them everywhere, in Spain, in Italy, in Greece, in Belgium, we can find those guys thanks to the social networks, which is the big difference between now and the 90s. In the 90s, there was nothing.
Yeah, I agree.
So we have to use this.
Instagram is getting a lot of attention for us.
Yeah, Instagram. Yeah, I didn't mention Instagram. Yeah, Instagram, of course, too. But, and this is why by incidents, the meeting with the football players and the demo with the football players give us more reason to communicate and attract those guys. And with those guys, helping them, showing them how to create a club, develop a club. Most of them know already because they are in their 50s or 40s, and they have kids and they know how to manage a club. And we have Pierre Troessler in Mulhouse also that started a new club. He's coming this weekend for the youth championship with his daughter. These are the kind of people we look for, but we can't really look for them. They come to us.
I agree. Now we're going to the end. Let's talk about the current situation and the future situation. How do you see now France how are you seeing the development? How are you happy about what you have achieved at the moment, or?
I was happy with the first 3 years. I'm not so happy with the last year because we didn't create as many clubs as I wanted in the last year. So I hope that next year with the World Cup, we have a big boulevard to create new clubs and really expand the game in this country, and finding new organizers, as I said, and also using this five-a-side football camps and sites to put tables and creating awareness and having more potential clubs coming. So this is for France, but I'm pretty sure that finding kids is not a problem because we have the right tables, we have the right equipment. If you manage to have the right person in front of them, it's not a big deal. It's just not a big deal. And I'm the proof of it in Puc and in Maison Lafitte, and every time we make demos, it's fantastic. The answer from the kids, it's fantastic. So of course it's not always full members that pay, but as I said, they can be if you follow up them in a nice way with the right people. We have the basis for new clubs everywhere. It's just putting the right person and finding the person that are willing to develop clubs.
Yeah, I agree.
This is for France, yeah.
And I think that there was a next question that was the same, but how do you think it can work in other federations? I think it's the same message. I mean,
the same. If you see in Italy, they have an amazing club that train kids in Genova, in Sombrero. I don't remember the town they are in, but those who take care of kids in a nice way, they have 10, 15, 20 kids. Antonio Montagno with his school is doing an amazing job. Juan Carlos Granados back in the days in Murcia did an amazing job. So when you do things in a nice way with kids, you have kids.
Yeah, in the same way, when in America, Police did the same in Maryland, it happens everywhere in the world. Yeah.
It happens everywhere in the world, and no matter what the video games are, what FIFA is, this is not the problem. And sometimes they play both, so it's not an argument. It's not a problem. So as I said, it's finding the right people and the organizers to do it. And this is a big problem, not just in France, but probably everywhere, because people are less involved. They are more selfish, and they don't want to spend their nights one night every week giving their time to somebody else. But as I said, I want to. If you want your life to have a meaning for others, this is something you have to do. For table football or for basketball or for whatever. But
your hobby, whatever your hobby is. I agree.
yeah.
And what do you think that can be done in international level to promote the sport? Because I have the opinion that the international federation is doing a lot for the competition itself, but not for the promotion. At least since I came back 5 years ago or 4 years ago.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think I have the same problem here in France. Sometimes, and as I said earlier, if you focus too much on the players that are already here, you lose you just walk on one leg.
Yeah.
And we want to walk on both legs. So if you want to walk on both legs, you have to have competitions that are organized in a nice way, but you also have to focus on development. Even FIFA is working for development of football. So I think FISTEF could probably, let's say, develop tutorials for learning how to play the games, how the rules should be played, not just experience rules, our rules, but also beginners rules. And the way you do videos with subtitles or, converting in different languages, it's not so difficult to do now. So FISTEF could do it for all of us and maybe have some sets of figures and cheaper pitches for what I said about five-a-side or football camps. If you want to give tables away in a football club or in a five-a-side club, if you want to put an extreme pitch, 100 euros, it's too expensive, So for these kind of purposes, we have to have cheap pitches, cheaper figures that would be easy to give away, and finding sponsors to give away in football clubs and five-a-side or paddle clubs. And this can be the role of FISTEF too, as an example. And maybe liaise with former internationals, maybe the union of football players. They have now a better organized union. I could do something because I also have contact with the president of the French the union of the French football players here, Philippe Lafont is his name, but they also have contacts with other countries' association of football players, and because this is something that really helps. If you manage to have Butragueño playing table football, of course, it would help. If you manage to have Gérard Piqué playing Subbuteo, that would help too.
Yeah, Carlos Flores went to the national TV.
I saw that, yeah.
And I think that this has come some impact, and some people has written to the association. So next and final question for now: what about you as a player? What are your expectations as a player?
I'm a bit like the Harlem Globetrotters. I enjoy to play when I play most of the times, and I enjoy to make tricky things, playing fast and scoring great goals and showing people and new players that you can really have fun playing. Now, as far as my personal results, I was happy to beat Massimo Bolognino in Rome in the last 16, I think it was, beating Massimo 5-4 in a great game. So I know I can really play at a very, very high level when I focus. But first, I can't really focus, and I really don't want to focus as much as I did, because I know what it takes when you want to reach back the top level. And also, I'm not sure I can play 7 games in the same day at a very, very high level. Back in the days, it was easier because in the group games, it was easy to go past the groups and get to the quarterfinals with, let's say, not sweating too much. Whereas now you have to be, very good, very consistent from the first game, and I'm not sure I can play that level for 7 games. So maybe I can win a Grand Prix or maybe an Open, international Open. But in a World Cup, I always reach maybe last 16 quarterfinals. Not sure I can go really further, even though I could beat anybody in the veterans. But I can beat anybody, but I can also lose to many.
So now we're entering new people, no? Veterans. Alberto Di Maggio is going to veterans. William Dotto, I think, is going to veterans now. It will
Yes,
be difficult and difficult.
difficult,
Yeah.
difficult. I have a full admiration for Saverio Barri, who is almost
Yeah.
my age, and he still plays Open. And I don't know. I ask him, and he's never he's always so focused on the competition, and he's playing as if he was still 30.
Yeah, he always gets to the semifinals or
Yeah,
finals or stuff like that. Yeah, yeah.
amazing, amazing. Yeah.
So that's
So
important.
no, not so much ambition for myself on the
Okay.
international level, other than having fun.
Okay. But still ambition in the organization.
Ah, yes,
Organization.
yes, high ambitions. I really want our game to grow, and I really want the best players like Carlos to have the recognition that they deserve.
Yeah, yeah, I told him in his interview that he reminds me of Ronnie O'Sullivan in snooker because he has this kind of
Mentality.
mentality and creativeness, and he's creating moves and stuff like that every tournament, and even the personality. I mean, he has a very charismatic way of being.
Charismatic.
Yeah, and that's important also for the game.
Sure, sure.
So that's all from my side. I don't know if you want to say anything else to.
I really want to thank you, Ricard, for organizing this. We have the time, and it's great to have time to talk about various subjects and have time to develop. Sometimes on Facebook, it's not so easy to develop the ideas and answering everything. And then you did an amazing job raising questions the way you did and preparing this podcast interview. And so, thank you so much.
Thanks.
And I
It was
hope.
a nice chat for me.
Thank you, and thank you for doing this because, as I said, I listened to Arturo and Carlos and Juan Carlos. I haven't had the time to listen to Alberto yet, but I will do for sure before the weekend. And they were all great interviews, and so thank you so much.
Thanks to you. So thank you, everyone. See you in the next episode.